Holy, okay, so this is kind of difficult to think about. I went over onto thefourthperiod.com. This is David Pagnotta's website. What he did was he published the article, The Trade Watch List of 2021-2022, the top 35 names in the NHL of players that are on the move or that might be on the move and that might be targets of other teams. It's a pretty standard, the fourth period kind of list, and it has every name and it has every team connected. What they did was they compiled everything and put it into one, and that's what we're going to be using for some video topics in the next few days because it's pretty cool, is it not? Let's go over on to the fifth most popular name on this trade watch list on the fourth period. It is none other than Arizona Coyotes forward Phil Kessel. Take a look at what they have to say about Phil the Thrill himself. It's no secret that the Coyotes would like to trade Kessel this season, just as much it is well known he would like to move to a Stanley Cup contender. The Coyotes will likely need to retain as much as half of his cap hit. He's only owed $1 million in salary this season after his $5 million bonus was paid out in July, and such a move is more likely to occur closer to the deadline. Now, what I like a lot about these articles on the fourth period is that they also include teams that are involved or reportedly involved with these players. Take a look at this. Teams reportedly linked to Kessel: Boston, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh. Now, I know there's Minnesota in this right here, and I'm only really focusing on two of them, but Boston and Pittsburgh are two teams that Phil the Thrill has indeed played for before. And to me, it makes things very intriguing when you acknowledge what's gone on with this player, the entire path he has taken, and whether or not he could end his current contract on one of these two teams. Now, I'm sorry, I apologize, Minnesota, if you want to go out there and hear some analysis about Kessel and your team, but I wanted to focus on the other two right here. So, Phil the Thrill, as we noted, he is a guy 34 years old, making $6.8 million a season. There's a reason it's like that. It's actually $8 million. But Toronto retained salary when he was traded to Pittsburgh in the first place. Now, this season he isn't really producing as well as he has been before. 33 points, 51 games played, which is a pretty good number to be fair. Like, he's on pace for 53 points, but he also is on pace for 10 goals on the year. He only has 6, which, if you know Phil Kessel, is pretty uncharacteristic of his overall profile. Now, last year he had 20 goals in 56 games played. He had 43 total points too. The year before that, his first season in Arizona was a pretty big decline ever since he had gotten traded over there from the Pittsburgh Penguins organization. Remember, in Pittsburgh, he was an absolute monster. 92-point seasons, 82-point seasons. He was a consistent 20-goal guy in each one of these campaigns. And so, even though Kessel is going out there and he's on pace for 43 assists, which is great because he actually has had worse seasons assist-wise in the past, you gotta remember that this is still a player that is supposed to be one of the elite names in the NHL, playing on an Arizona team that is very clearly going out there and trying to tank. Does that excuse 6 goals on the year? Probably not, but it could be seen as one of the more understandable reasons as to why that's happening. I mean, the Coyotes only have 3 10-goal scorers in total. Clayton Keller has 20, Lawson Krause has 14, and Travis Boyd, of all people, has 10. Yeah, remember that? Former Leaf picked up on waivers by Vancouver, Travis Boyd. He's gone out there with 10 goals on the season. Phil Kessel is at 6. But just seeing these two teams, Boston and Pittsburgh, as potential links for Kessel makes things super intriguing to me. For Boston specifically, we actually have made a video talking about Kessel going back over there in a hypothetical trade proposal that I believe was also involving Jake DeBrusk, and that was an entire video we made about the topic. You can go ahead and watch that if you want to hear my opinions on it. But Phil Kessel going back over to the Boston Bruins would make things really interesting over there in B-Town. We've known the Bruins over the past, let's say, few months, I guess, as having the reputation of being a one-line team. Okay, it's that Marchand, Pastrnak, and Bergeron unit, and when one of these guys is out, you have to have other players step up. Okay, maybe Pastrnak gets himself a few one-time goals in overtime here and there like he has as of late, and maybe you're going out there and expecting somebody else in the lineup to step up too. But aside from Taylor Hall, this lineup has not really had the most diversified scoring profile, because you take a look at what happens next. I mean, Charlie Coyle has 24 points, good for him. Jake DeBrusk has 17, Hall has 17, Smith 16, Curtis Lazar 13. It really does drop off after that top 4. So, Phil Kessel being added onto this team, I mean, he's already got himself a pretty good season of 33 points on the Arizona Coyotes. He would be already the 5th best guy on this team in points. Not to mention the fact that he would be getting better line mates, better playing time, etc., etc. So, seeing Phil the Thrill back in Boston actually does make sense if you want to go out there and say that this could be a piece that helps them really go on a run one more time. Patrice Bergeron might not come back. He might not re-sign. This may be our last hurrah with our current captain, so why not go out there, try to make a splash? And then for the Pittsburgh Penguins, you also have yourselves not really exactly the same story, but similar enough that I think it's worth bringing up at the very least. You got guys like Crosby, Malkin, Letang, etc., but Letang is really the one that I think a lot of people are going out there and thinking about when it comes to whether or not he'll actually return. His contract does expire too, and it's been very noted that he wants to get paid what he's worth, and based off of the market and other players in the NHL, especially defensemen who have been getting paid, there's a certain price tag that I think exists in Letang's mind that he might not be able to get in Pittsburgh, so we'll have to keep an eye out on that, especially since he is a point per game this season. Like, Letang has absolutely exploded. This has been a great year for Chris Letang for sure. And so if you really want to go all in, you want to have that same mentality, okay, this might be our last time actually going to the playoffs and doing something great with Letang, why not trade back for Phil the Thrill? This is a guy that was already tossed around like hotcakes earlier on in the year. He was traded over to Pittsburgh in a package that included, like, Alex Galchenyuk and Pierre-Olivier Joseph. We made that video when the trade was made in front of a ramen shop because I was actually hanging out with my friends when that happened. But Phil Kessel has been traded from both of these teams, Boston and Pittsburgh, but it does strike me in a very similar fashion as to why each of them would want to get this guy back. They both have good players, they both have star players, but these star players and their timelines on these teams are sort of ephemeral at this time. We don't really know what the long term holds for guys like Bergeron and guys like Letang. Funny enough, they're both French-Canadian, they both might go to Quebec because that's what all Canadians journalists are going out there and trying to say that might happen. But when it comes to Pittsburgh and Boston, these two teams could very much benefit from what a Kessel could bring. If you want to take a look at returns, Arizona's going to want to go out there and get draft picks, they want to go out there and get prospects. It's pretty self-explanatory what their end goal is here. And so for Boston, we already talked about Jake DeBrusk, not because he's a prospect, but because he is a younger forward that could go out there and service the Coyotes long term. You want to talk about other prospects they have. They do have John Beecher. They do have Fabian Lysell. Lysell is the one that I kind of want for Vancouver should the Bruins acquire a guy like JT Miller. And then, of course, there are the draft picks. But when I think about the Pittsburgh Penguins, there are some prospects that do intrigue me as well. Of course, there is the Pierre-Olivier Joseph that was actually sent over to Pittsburgh in the first Kessel trade. It would be very funny if the Arizona Coyotes made a pitch to try to get him back. Then, of course, you have Nathan Legare, Philip Hollander, and then the goaltender prospect to Joel Blomqvist. Now, the problem with both of these teams is that their prospect pools aren't really the best. Like, it's been pretty widely known that both Pittsburgh and Boston have not had a significant amount of proper draft capital because they're always trading them away for players to help them out in the playoffs. Not to mention the fact that a lot of the guys that they have drafted have not really been, like, the most top of the line because they're always drafting later in the first round, etc., etc. So they haven't really had any top-of-the-line, A-tier prospects like the Raymonds and the Zegrises and the Makars and the Hugheses and the Kakos and all of them. They don't really have anybody who is of that caliber. So it would be a little bit more difficult to me if I'm Arizona trying to pinpoint what exactly it is that I would want, because there are so many options that are of, let's say, B, C tier caliber that it makes the job a little bit more difficult, but at the same time a lot more personalized, because it's like, okay, I really do want Nathan Legare from Pittsburgh. I don't want this other guy. We'll see where it goes, right? Of course, Minnesota is also involved here too, and we haven't said a word about them this entire video. I wanted to focus on the two former Kessel teams in terms of that entire aspect right here. Kessel going back and playing with the Penguins again would be pretty fun for the memes. Like, I get it, there's no more HBK line, there's no H and there's no B. Benino's gone, so is Hagelin. But having Kessel back there would make things super intriguing to me, and I would love to see that go down, honestly, a lot more than Boston, because I don't really like Boston. I'm a Canucks fan, so there's the explanation there. But talk to me in the comments, what do you think? If you're a Bruins fan or a Penguins fan, what are your opinions on Phil Kessel? Do you think your team should go out there and trade for this guy one more time to try to make a single run at the end of Letang and or Bergeron's tenure with your teams, assuming they don't re-sign and they don't actually come back? What would you give up for Kessel? Do you actually want this guy? Let me know in the comments all your thoughts and opinions. I hope you enjoyed this British Shoals 99. And bye.